Hi everybody, welcome back to Pediatric Therapy Essentials. My name is Dr. Heather Sossaman and I'm a pediatric physical therapist. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about crossing midline, so stick around. Hi everybody and welcome back. Well, in this week's episode, we're going to be talking about a really important topic, and that is crossing midline. So what is midline? Well, midline is an imaginary line that runs down the center of our body. It starts at the top of our head and it goes all the way down to our feet. And this line divides our body into two equal halves, the left and the right. Many of the movements and activities that we do on a daily basis require us to cross this imaginary line.
For example, if you have a hair dryer in your right hand and you dry the hair on the left side of your head, then you have to cross this imaginary line.
And when we cross that imaginary line, you guessed it, we call it crossing midline.
Crossing midline can be done with our eyes, hands, arm, feet, or legs. Our eyes cross the midline when we read a book. Our legs and feet can cross midline when we're doing something fun like kicking a ball or line dancing. Our arms and hands can cross the midline when we're doing something like brushing our teeth or playing a fun clapping game.
Each side of our body, not including our head, is controlled by the opposite side of our brain. So my right hand is controlled by the left side of my brain, and my left foot is controlled by the right side of my brain. Although control of our body is divided to different sides of our brain, that doesn't mean that both sides of our brain don't work together. In fact, the opposite is true.
Communication between the left and right sides of our brain is essential for many tasks, including crossing midline. However, we are not born knowing how to do this. Instead, our brains learn this important skill through practice and play.
This communication between both sides of our brain is essential for crossing midline, but it's not something that babies are born knowing how to do. It's a skill that's learned and practiced over time.
At around 3 months of age, babies begin to follow objects across midline with their eyes. If you've ever watched a baby follow a toy or you're jingling car keys, you've seen them cross midline with their eyes. As they get a little bit older, they begin to grab toys and play with them at the midline position, often putting them in their mouths. With continued play and development, babies learn to reach across midline to grab a toy, move objects from one hand to another, and then use their arms and legs in a reciprocal pattern to crawl. All of this play and development is teaching both sides of the brain how to work together.
During the first 4 to 6 years of development, children continue to practice and learn skills that require bilateral coordination, which is the use of both sides of their body, and therefore their brain, working together. And crossing midline is one of those skills.
Children practice crossing midline by interacting with their environment. When they do normal play things like crawling, pushing cars along the ground, climbing on playground equipment or trees, finger painting, and playing games like Simon Says, they're practicing crossing the midline over and over again. In recent years, children have been spending more and more time in front of screens, and babies have been spending more and more time in baby equipment that keeps them in one position. These factors have had an impact on the amount of time children spend interacting with their environment, which in turn impacts all areas of development, including a child's ability to cross midline.
The ability to cross midline is an essential part of child development. If a child is not able to cross midline, there are multiple areas that can be affected over time.
Children who have difficulty crossing midline may have trouble with writing. We need to be able to cross our body to write across an entire sheet of paper. They may also have trouble with reading. Our eyes need to be able to scan from the left to the right side of the page in order to read the text. Fine motor skills can also be a challenge. Activities such as cutting with scissors, coloring, and stringing beads are just a few examples. And finally, we have to consider gross motor skills. Activities such as hitting a ball with a bat or catching a ball, especially one not thrown directly at you, can be difficult, as well as skipping, running, jumping, and even hopping.
There are several indicators that tell us a child might be having difficulty crossing midline. Now remember that these behaviors can always be attributed to other causes, but you might want to be on the lookout for them.
A child who is having difficulty crossing midline might switch hands when they're writing or cutting when they reach the middle of the piece of paper. They may also turn their body from side to side when they reach the middle of the paper to avoid crossing over. You may also notice a child only using their left hand when they do things on the left side of their body and only using their right hand when they do things on the right side of their body. And finally, you might notice them kicking a ball with their left and right foot depending on which side of their body the ball is positioned or rolling towards.
If you have concerns that your child is demonstrating some of these behaviors and think that there might be an issue with crossing midline, please reach out to your medical provider, whether that's your doctor, your PT, or your OT, for further evaluation and consideration. So how can we help children improve their ability to cross midline? Well, there's several things to do based on a child's age.
Babies need to spend a lot of time simply rolling around on the floor and playing, especially on their tummies. When babies are allowed to explore and play on their own, they will naturally begin to reach out in all sorts of directions, using their eyes, their arms, and their hands to cross that magical midline. Babies can get frustrated and cry when they're on their tummy, but that's okay. As they get stronger and more mobile, they'll realize what a great position this is to explore in, and they'll be very content. As babies get a little bit older, they should be spending lots of time crawling. There is so much communication going on between both sides of the brain when babies are crawling, not to mention the strength and coordination benefits this activity provides. Toddlers and young children can work on midline skills with fun activities like stacking or playing with blocks, pushing cars across the ground, rolling and throwing balls, and playing outside with sidewalk chalk. And the options for older kids are endless. Games like Simon Says and Twister are a great way to work on crossing midline. Art and craft projects like stringing beads can be really great, and so are chores. Things like wiping the counter, the mirrors, or sweeping also encourage crossing midline. Kids can spend time outside creating elaborate sidewalk chalk drawings to work on their midline skills. And they can also play clapping games like Miss Mary Mac or floor games like Hot Potato. Another great idea is to use shaving cream or whipped cream to create an art project on a mirror or sliding glass door. And of course, gross motor games like T-ball and catch are great ways to work on midline too.
I hope you guys enjoyed this week's video and learned a little something new about crossing the midline. If you enjoyed this topic of midline, make sure to come back next week, because in that video, I'm going to have 3 5-minute workouts or activity sessions that are all about crossing the midline. If you enjoyed this video, the greatest compliment you can give me is a thumbs up and a comment below about what you liked. If you did enjoy this video and like to see more like it, be sure to subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing you next Saturday with those 3 crossing midline workouts. Have a great week. Bye.